subscribe and hit the bell icon for any future upload. And also, relax and enjoy the experience.
What is up guys, Siddharth here back with another video, and today I'm going to be doing a review about a device that came around a year ago. Back in the time where dual cameras were a thing only on premium devices like flagships. But even at that time, there was a device that came around $200 with a dual camera, and that was the Honor 6X. And today I'm going to be doing a review on it. Now of course, before we move on to the full and comprehensive review, I would like to clarify some things about Honor, the company. Now Honor is a budget-oriented device manufacturer which is a separate branch from the massive Chinese smartphone manufacturer Huawei. And this is one of their finest products yet of 2016. And this came out in late 2016, right after the release of the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. But later in 2017, they came out with many more devices by the end of the year, which were alright, they were great. They all had the trendy 18:9 aspect ratio, all with dual cameras, and some of them even had them up front. So, is this device from 2016 worth it in 2018? It may not have the trendy specs of 2018 that you might expect, but at least it checks the 5 important points that any smartphone should have. And those are good build quality, good battery life, a great camera, an awesome display, and of course, great performance. But then again, since this is a smartphone from a different manufacturer other than Google, I would like to add a few points, such as software and of course other features that the smartphone manufacturer has added onto this device. So why don't we take a look at the comprehensive review of the Honor 6X. So to start things off, I would like to talk about the build quality of the Honor 6X. This has a nice premium metal feel in the hand since it's made from 6000 series aluminum. But because of 6000 series aluminum, the design of the Honor 6X is really fragile. And of course, the fact that this glass is relatively unknown among any smartphone manufacturer. I don't know what material the glass is made of. As far as everything went with Shaddick everything's durability test with the Honor 6X, it bent like an iPhone 6. But of course, that's only the structural integrity of the phone. The design, it actually looks a lot like Huawei's Mate 9, which was also released in 2016. And that's maybe why they call it the Huawei Mate 9 Lite. But then again, the design is also great. We do have plastic buttons, but they at least are nice and clicky. We have the volume rocker and the power button to the right, and of course down below we have a micro USB port in between a microphone and a really decent speaker. Up top we have a headphone jack, which was the dying breed of 2017, starting off with the iPhone series, which were the first smartphones that I knew in a while commercially to remove the headphone jack. Right beside a microphone up top as well. To the left, we also have a hybrid SIM tray which has support for micro SD expansion. And up front, we have a massive 5.5-inch Full HD IPS LCD panel. Below that, we have some aggressive Honor branding, and above that we have the front-facing earpiece speaker, and of course can be utilized as stereo speakers, but Honor refuses to do so and uses it as a regular earpiece, which is wedged in between an 8-megapixel front-facing camera and the proximity and light sensors. And up back we have a vertical dual camera setup right above the fingerprint scanner, which is of course placed in the most prominent position. The camera also has right beside it an LED flash. And that was it about the build quality and the design of the Honor 6X. Next off, we'll talk about the battery life of the smartphone. Next off, when we're talking about battery life, I would always like to talk about the screen on time that any smartphone has, and I know that a lot of people also want to talk about that too. So to start things off, the battery of this device is actually a 3340 mAh battery, which compared to other smartphones that came in late 2017 is pretty small, but only by 700 milliamp hours because a lot of smartphones started coming out with 4000 as the maximum they could hold. But even with a 3340 milliamp hour battery, this thing provides wonders with screen on time. The maximum screen on time that I could get with the Honor 6X on really regular usage that were done under Wi-Fi, I could actually get a screen on time of around 6.5 hours maximum. Sometimes I could get 5 to 6.5 hours, and that's the range when it's on light use. But if it's on heavy use, where I travel a lot and I use the mobile data while I'm doing all the other stuff, it lasts from around 4.5 hours minimum to around 5.5 hours if I regularly turn off and on mobile data. And I have never used the battery saver mode that Huawei has given me, but then again, that's not bad at all for a smartphone that came out in 2016 with pretty heavy software. So the battery life of the device gives a thumbs up. It's great, and I love the battery life of the phone entirely. Then again, when you see charging times, it is a bit and maybe a lot slow there. It takes an entire 2 hours and 15 minutes approximately to charge from 10 or 0 to 100. And that's it about the battery life, and for me the battery life is a huge thumbs up. Moving on, why don't we start talking about the camera, which we have a lot to cover. Alright, to start things off about the camera, this is a dual camera setup at the back and a single camera setup up front. At the back we have a 12 megapixel f2.0 sensor, and below that we have a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now of course, the depth sensor is 2 megapixels only and is only used to get that blurry background effect, so it doesn't have great use for it. Now of course, the 12 megapixel sensor performs great without the dual camera setup itself. The natural 2.0 aperture also provides some awesome bokeh effect to the image, so the 12 megapixel sensor gets a huge thumbs up. But when it comes to portrait shots, that's where it's either hit or miss. When it comes to objects like a satellite dish or a ball or any object which has a sharp and defined edge, it's able to provide a good amount of sharpness and bokeh to the background on portrait mode. But when it comes to humans, that's where it struggles the most. When it's a full human picture, it takes the face and a part of the shoulder perfectly, but with some kinks near the edges. And then the entire body is either partially blurred out or partially not blurred out. I even tried up some close candid portrait shots, and those didn't come out too well. Of course, the person is really softened by the camera processing, and the edges, they're not refined well, so edge detection on portrait mode is not the best. But if you're using the manual camera setup, you could at least get some really nice natural bokeh out of that f2.0 aperture that you get. So you could use portrait mode, but if you use it on objects, it's great there, but if you use it on people, it's either a hit or a miss, and most of the times it's a miss. So portrait mode is still finicky on the Honor 6X, but if you're using the natural bokeh using Pro mode on this device, it works well. But then again, other than that, auto mode works amazing, and HDR, while it's not processed HDR, it only brightens up the front image and reduces highlights of the back, it still works pretty well. So HDR is alright, not that bad. Then moving on to night shots or low light shots, that's where the camera struggles a lot. Since you have not so much light to work with, it ends up pumping up the ISO all the way over 800. Hence, a lot of grain is introduced. So low light shots, while they're not the best, Huawei has added a nice feature called night shot mode, where it does use HDR variety of processing in order to process the image and give you zero grained and crisp and clear images, and they were pretty good. It increases the shutter speed, reduces the ISO, and uses HDR processing to take multiple images and align them according to correct exposure, giving you a balanced exposure across all borders. So it gives you a pleasant and nice night image, and I personally love it. it's great that way. But moving on, why don't we take a look at the front facing camera now. Talking about the front facing camera, which is an 8 megapixel sensor, it's actually not that bad. It's great and crisp, and of course is wide enough to allow a lot of people in to take a group selfie, so it's great. But then again, software processing allows it to smoothen and soften your face and make it look pleasant, but also artificial at the same time. Although the front-facing camera of the Honor 6X is great, it does need a little bit of work when it comes to low light shots. There is some lag with low light shots, or there is no lag and you have a lot of noise grain with low light shots. So while they're great, they're not amazing. So that's there. But moving on, why don't we take a look at the video recording capabilities of both the front facing camera and the rear facing camera. Now, since both of these don't have optical or electronic image stabilization, they do appear a bit jerky and shaky, but the video quality that comes out of the camera is really amazing. It's sharp and it's crisp, and personally, I like the video quality of the Honor 6X. Now, after the whole thing about the camera, why don't we move up front to that massive 5.5-inch display, which is of course a full HD IPS LCD panel, which isn't that bad and is amazingly sharp. Now, of course, while reducing the display brightness all the way down to 0, it doesn't get that dim. But when you increase the brightness, it gets really bright, making it nice and visible during broad daylight. Even at mid brightness, it is nice and visible in broad daylight. It is great, the display is amazing, it's nice, sharp and crisp, and it is colorful and vivid. Though it's not as vivid as an AMOLED or an OLED. So that's it about the display. Why don't we move on and talk about the speakers or speaker of this smartphone. Now, of course, all the way below, down bottom of the smartphone, we have one bottom firing speaker, which of course isn't that bad, but it is a bit teeny. But where I can compare it is with a Samsung Galaxy smartphone. Though it's not the best, it's okay. But then again, while I'm talking about the speakers, I can also talk about the earpiece. Now, of course, when I'm using the earpiece during calls, it does get nice and loud and crisp, and it is super loud, such that a person standing 2 to 3 feet near me can actually hear the entire conversation. But then again, Huawei has this feature where it allows you to reduce the volume of the earpiece and allow you to hear it but not the person near you. So that's a huge thumbs up, and the speaker is great. And maybe the next software update could provide functionality for stereoscopic effect, and I would actually love it. Huawei can do it, or Honor can do it. And then moving on to talk about the performance of the smartphone, which is amazing. Just to give you a few specifications, this has an octa-core high-silicon Kirin 655 processor in it, along with a Mali T830 MP2 GPU, as well as 3 GB of RAM to back that up with 32 gigs of internal memory. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, you might as well hit the subscribe button as well as the like button in order to keep up with the channel. But in real sense, if that doesn't really make sense to you, a few Geekbench scores might bring you into some sense. So in Geekbench, on a single core score, it scored 819, and on a multi-core score, it scored 3,320. Which of course is where the Snapdragon 630 processors have actually scored on Geekbench. Moving on to Antutu scores, which have pushed the performance of the processor as well as the GPU of the device, and we have a score of 56,020 on Antutu benchmarks, so that's great. But of course, if those Geekbench scores does not make any sense to you as well, on a whole, all I'd like to say is that it is really fast and performs really well and allows you to multitask a lot. Hence being that it is also recommended for people who heavily use their smartphones for multitasking and doing multiple jobs at the same time. I personally am a heavy user. I do heavy tasks that tax the battery as well as the performance of a smartphone. But ever since I used it for the past 3 months, I haven't been able to get any hiccup from it. Although it does have the occasional lags and freezes and crashes sometimes with a few applications, it is performing amazingly well. So on a whole, performance gets a huge thumbs up if you are even a heavy user. If you're a light user, this could be used in order to speed through all your tasks if you're not the kind that uses multitasking or anything like that. But then again, moving on, why don't we talk about the software of the Honor 6X, which is of course amazing. Now to some people it might seem like an actual replica of iOS, but I like to consider it a refinement of iOS and how iOS can actually be. Now of course, out of the box it came with Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow with EMUI 4.1.3, which was not the best software for the Honor 6X. It is one of the worst softwares that any smartphone could be booted up with. So of course, after a month, I upgraded it to Android 7.0 with EMUI 5.0, which was better than EMUI 4.1.3. Until then, I was rocking a Nova Launcher Pro version with a pixel skin on top of it. Now of course, a lot of people still complain with EMUI 5.0 that it is a lot like iOS. Even 8.0, EMUI 8.0 looks a lot like iOS. And to consider, EMUI is that kind of software which only a few would like and few would like to hate. Now of course, I've personally grown to like EMUI even though they're not consistent with their updates. But moving on, I have a tiny gripe with the software updates of the smartphone from being non-consistent. Out of the box, I got it with EMUI 4.1.3 at the time where EMUI 5.0.1 was available to all Honor devices, and I got the update only a month after getting the device out of the box. Even after that, updates were really inconsistent. I was actually using a third-party software called Firmware Finder, which is legally used by a lot of people in order to update their software to the latest version. So that's something that I'd like to fix, since they have a lot of model numbers to cover. They have over 15 model numbers to cover for the Honor 6X alone. So software updates could be a lot inconsistent, but I would like to get the upgrade to Android 8.0 as soon as possible with EMUI 8.0. Please Honor, if you're watching this video, I would like you guys to send the update as soon as possible by the first or second week of March. So that's my gripe, and I would like to receive the Android 8.0 software update as soon as possible. Now moving on, after talking about software, let's talk about some awesome features that the software of Honor has to offer to you guys. With EMUI 5.0.1, you get so many amazing features, and let me list them out to you one by one. First feature, of course, is double tapping the volume down button on the lock screen, which opens up the camera app. Long pressing the volume down button allows you to call a contact instantly by telling the contact name to the device. Swiping down on the fingerprint scanner opens the notification panel, and swiping back up closes the notification panel. Holding down both the volume up and lock button at the same time activates the built-in screen recording application. Now of course, with screenshots, you could take scrolling screenshots. There's a hidden Wi-Fi bridge mode which amplifies the existing Wi-Fi range around another specific area from the phone. Other features include having a built-in Pro Mode camera application, which is so rare to see in such budget devices. Then again, it also has Huawei Share, which allows for ultra-fast sharing between Huawei devices. It has a theme engine which you could use if you are bored with the stock theme that you get out of the box, or you can also download it from external sources in the internet and look for the most latest themes from Huawei on their latest flagship smartphone. You could choose whether to have an app drawer look like a regular Android or a non-app drawer look like an iOS device. The camera app has a wide aperture mode where you could control the aperture of the lens. Well, digitally of course. The camera app also has a light painting mode and a document scanning mode, and many other useful modes that most budget smartphones might or might not have. So that wraps it up for this video. Hope you liked it. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe, follow me on all social media links linked down in the description below. Support me on Patreon, and I'll see you guys later.